Okay, first of all, my apologies because I had kind of prepared a presentation, but most of it was in a mind map, and I use this application called MindJet Mind Manager, and I'm using it for the first time on my netbook, and it keeps crashing when I export to PowerPoint. It doesn't crash when I export to Microsoft Word, so today you're going to see a presentation in Microsoft Word. I just have three introductory slides on myself, which are these. I tend to talk a lot about privacy these days. That has to do with my interests. It also has to do with my job. I work most of my time as a technical advisor to the Dutch Data Protection Authority. That's in Dutch Volledige Persoonsgegevens. So that's the equivalent of the Privacy Commissie, donc la Commission pour la protection de la vie privée. Am I saying this correctly? What does this organization do? In Europe we have privacy legislation, data protection legislation is a technical term. That's the same everywhere in Europe. So there's actually no difference in the European Union between privacy legislation. There is some difference in nuances and interpretation sometimes, but in every EU country we have this organization that makes sure that this law is being liked both by governments and by private companies. So this is an example of what we did recently. Like there was the police was monitoring license plates on a systematic way, even if you hadn't done anything. And so this Dutch Privacy Commission said, you can't do this. You can only monitor license plates if you have a suspicion that people actually have done something wrong. And then another thing. Oh yeah. And there's a lot of discussion as well on websites, but I'll come back to that. And now we're going to switch to Microsoft Word. So it will be a bit confusing. And yeah. And what are you? So basically, I'm going through the text. You don't have to watch the slides. It's just that I know where I'm in my story more or less. So if you talk about privacy on the web, that's a discussion you're probably familiar with. For example, there's this discussion now going on between the search engines and the European privacy organizations on how long they can keep their search logs. Every time you put in a search query in Google stores your IP address, your search log, and the cookie, so they can actually reproduce your thought stream for quite a long period. They set their limit now at 18 months, and after those 18 months, they do some kind of anonymization. And the whole discussion is about that period and the kind of anonymization they do. But you've heard about Facebook and privacy. You've probably heard about behavioral targeting and privacy. Behavioral targeting means that all of those ads by Google that you see on websites, every time you open a website that has ads by Google registers your visit to that website and creates a profile of your interests, and then you target advertising based on that profile. So all of these discussions you have now on the web, we will have about location-based applications. What do I mean with location-based applications? Internet applications that in some way do use your location. I've given this presentation to legal people already, and I kind of made a categorization for location-based applications. I mean, that's subject for discussion. This is what I came up with. So the first kind I call location-centered. Location-centered means where location is really the core functionality of the application, like all kinds of navigation applications, Google Maps, Mobile Me that traces your laptop when you've lost it, Google Latitude, things like Foursquare, Koala, most of you people use. There are also, for example, on the iPhone App Store, dating applications for sexual minorities, because, I mean, you can't see what people are interested in on their faces, but if you register for this application, you can actually see who's in your neighborhood who has a specific interest. Now, location becomes a part of all web applications and apps. I mean, you have these Flickr apps, Android apps, Lonely Planet. If you launch your Lonely Planet guide for Berlin in your iPhone, it will show you the Lonely Planet articles that are about the stuff that is in your neighborhood. So every time you launch an application, you give your location name as an extra parameter, and it personalizes the content. Or you can use location as an annotation, so you have Twitter hives. Every time you update something or you do some input in some user-generated site, you can send your location with it. You probably know all of these applications, so I don't have to explain that to you. Now, who could be a threat to your privacy? I will discuss 4 groups of people. The government can be a threat to your privacy. Other users can be a threat to your privacy. App developers can be a threat to your privacy in the sense that they decide on how an application actually works. So they determine how your data will be treated, will be exposed to other people. They determine the rules. And then a 4th group, which I would like to concentrate on, and I would like to have some discussion on that, because I think that's the least known component of the whole game, and these are what I call location providers. The government, well, we pretty much have given up our privacy already when it comes to location. You probably have heard of the Data Retention Directive. In Dutch, it's called bewaarplicht. I'm not sure what the French name is. Maybe someone can help me. So the fact that ISPs have to store every time you log on to your ISP, if you call in or if you make a connection, if you make a broadband connection, they will store your IP address and your account name. So they have to be able, if the police afterwards asks them who had this IP address at this time, they have to be able to produce your name, your address data. That's part of this data directive. Another part for telcos is they have to store mastgegevens. So which antenna did you connect to at which time? So you're actually followed by your telco provider, Movistar, Proximus,